So the right-hand man of the kings and queens, before anybody else, like now it's like you would have some religious person, from a church, the Pope, but then the Pope was the musician, the guy who created the music. And I always say how far we've fallen from those days.
Well, the Psalms in the Bible are often addressed to the chief musician.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Paramahansa Yogananda said in Sanskrit, in the language Sanskrit, the definition of a musician is he who sings the praises of the Creator. And that's the literal translation of the word musician, which was Charlie Mariano one night. I only got to meet Charlie a little bit, but I know you've had some experience with him. You guys made a record and everything, but Charlie was such a down-home cat in his way. We're sitting there, and I said, Charlie, you went to India and you learned the Nagaswaram, like the Indian type saxophone and everything. And he was telling me, he said, he was starting to tell me about that experience of being in India and, having to play this instrument. And he said, my two greatest experiences in music, one was to be able to sit in and play with Charlie Parker a few times while Burr was around. And we were on this Kenton band doing this tour, and we jamming with Charlie Parker. And the other moment was when I was in India, and my master told me, he made me practice outside the temple. And one day he came to me and he said, okay, you've gotten good enough to play inside the temple. And Charlie said, and this made my life. He said, I was so happy. So Charlie, had that Boston accent. He still had that New England sound to his voice and everything. I said, Charlie, that makes an interesting point. I was reading Yogananda, and Yogananda says that the translation literally of the word musician is he who sings the praise of the Creator. So I imagine that Indian musicians, unlike their American and Western counterparts, we have cats doing the same thing. I think we're all singing the praises of the Creator, but we got these substances that we get hooked on, and we got these other influences in the music. Are these cats maybe even celibate or something, or very well behaved? And I get that impression that he would be like that. And Charlie said, well, he said, not my master. The guy these are his exact words. He said, he was a fucking drunk. He died at 30.
Yeah, they were the same. That's what happened to me because. Oh, right. So when I was young, one night, my parents had, gone out, and me and my sister were home alone. And as kids do when they're home alone, they go through all the drawers and look. I don't know what we were looking for, but I found these records, and 78 records, and I put this record on. Now it was getting around 11 o'clock at night. It's getting dark, and I put this record on, and out of the speakers it says, dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Scared the shit out of us. We took that record out, man. We might have gone to bed. I don't know what we did, but we were sitting there waiting for the parents to come home. So, make a long story short, classical music, that of course, that was Beethoven's.
Yeah, Fifth Symphony.
It all sounded the same. Every time they could have put on Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, Schumann, Wagner, anybody. It all sounded like the same song. I said, oh, they're playing that song again. So it wasn't until I went to Juilliard, and we had this, because I was a composition major at Juilliard. So we had to read the bios on all of the composers. And I'm reading about Mussorgsky, the night on
Pictures in the exhibition,
pictures of the exhibition. And I'm reading about his life, and he came from a military family. His grandfather, great-grandfather, his dad, they all were in the military, generals and colonels. And so that's where he had to be. He had to go in the service. That's what you did in those days. So he's in the service, but he wanted to write music. He would go AWOL, go off, write music, and then they'd find him in a doorway, drunk, passed out. I said, man, That sound, I won't mention any names, but that sound like some friends of mine.
Yeah, right. I mean,
So that drew me into the music, and I began to listen to the music in a different light because I saw they were just like us. Before that, it was like, oh, but it wasn't like that. It was just like what we're doing. So that opened me up to that.
yeah,
Um,
they had absinthe where we had opiates. You
yeah.
know, absinthe was the scourge of a lot of those cats. You know, that was their
What was
absinthe.
absent?
Yeah, absinthe. I think it's pronounced
What is that?
Absinthe.
No, no, I know the word, but I thought that was like a drink or something.
It is a drink,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's got like a drug kind of effect on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like Pernod. You
Well,
put it in water and it's like a licorice taste.
well, Bob, where can we find this?
It used to be legal in Switzerland, and that was the only place it was legal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I actually knew somebody who used to run a festival there, and
Hmm.
he got so into absinthe that he literally lost his mind.
Oh, wow.
It made him totally crazy. I mean, totally
Hmm.
like delusionary.
Absent. His mind was absent.
His mind was absent. Yeah. But I mean, Van Gogh and Gauguin and a lot of those composers,
Oh, really?
yeah, that was sort of like the high of preference.
I thought they did the what is that? The paint, it's some kind of paint thing, painters that
Well,
they sniffed.
there might have been that too.
Yeah.
I mean, cocaine was
Oh,
around,
yeah, that was always, yeah.
so they might have been sniffing that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know absinthe was probably somebody in our audience knows a lot about that.
Yeah.
I mean,
They may be doing it as we speak.
maybe doing it as we speak. And if you are, please let us know.
I did have that. Because they a lot of times, your place, they say, well, you gotta have everybody, you gotta have this one, just a little bit. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that. I remember that. Wow.
yeah, it was an unusual kind of thing. And there are young people that watch this and everything, and we're not really advocating the use of
Oh,
drugs.
no,
But
no,
the thing is that
I don't drink anymore.
I don't drink either. It's been
I,
years.
I don't drink any less. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, I fell into that one, huh? But
Yeah, no, but I mean, musicians through the years, because like I say, it is nature's religion. It ties us all together. That I feel Beethoven like I feel Bird. So it's the music that ties us all together. And in reality, it really ties the world together. But the world has figured a way to how to create adversaries. Because they find, and I noticed this in working with different band leaders. Some band leaders I call the old style band leaders. The way they treat their band is they always have the band members at odds with each other, so that they don't come to them messing with the band leader. The band leaders got them at odds, and that's what has happened in this world. They have everybody, so nobody will really come at the real people because they're too busy fighting each other who are really on the same side. It's crazy.
that's quite interesting. Yeah, I think that. Well, I mean, I just know a little bit of that experience when I was with Mingus. There were some factions on that band that was kind of.
I thought he was going to kill me one day.
Yeah, oh yeah, you do.
Uh,
Yeah,
literally, literally.
literally.
Yeah. I,
What provoked it, may I ask?
well,
Just in a bad mood.
no, we were doing, he had a residency at the Mercer Street Playhouse in, down Lower Manhattan.
Right.
And the
Now
big
Soho.
band, huh?
What's now Soho, but I mean.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it was the big band. Charles McPherson and Charles was first alto, I was second alto. Roy Brooks was the drummer. I remember Bill Hartman. It was a bunch, a lot of the regulars. And so the music, Mingus's music is hard because he wrote it to be hard. He could have written it easier, but he would write it to be hard to keep you on your toes. So, like a dotted quarter, he would sometimes write a dotted, instead of write a dotted quarter, he'd write 3/8 notes tied together,
Yeah, yeah.
All you had to do is put the dotted quarter, but anyway, so he did that like that. So I was taking the music home every night. So this particular night, I had a record date the next day. So I went to the record date went over, and I was trying to call Mingus and say, man, can somebody come and get this music? Because I can't get up there and I couldn't get in touch with anybody. And so I'm late for the get to the gig with Mingus. And so when
there were no cell phones then, by the way, folks.
Right. Yeah. So I get there and I forget the piano player's name. Somebody just told me, but he
Don Poland?
No, it was before that, before Don. I can't. He ended up. He moved to Europe and he passed away over there.
Not Nico Bunig.
No, it wasn't Nico.
That was earlier, yeah.
But anyway, so he was outside. And I said, man, well, what's
John Foster.
John, yeah, John
Foster.
Yeah,
that's right. Sir.
He was out there. He said, man, Mingus did. He canceled the rest of the, month because you weren't there. But I said, oh my God. I said, so what do you think I should do, man? I didn't want to go up and face. He said, well, I guess we just go up and tell him, see, at least let him know you're here and give him the music, So I go upstairs, and it was a bar. You had to go through the bar to go in the back where the bandstand was. And so all the guys, and Bill Hardman sees me, and he said, man, you motherfucker. He said, man, I get one gig a year, and you got to fuck this up. The guy, they was mad at me and shit. And so I go back, and Mingus he's leaning back on the banister that goes up the steps to the bandstand. And he's just standing there. And he looks at me, and I walk up to him. I said, how you doing? I'm sorry, And he just calls the band, and we go up and we played. And he never mentioned it. Oh. I said, oh my God. That was scary, though. That was really scary.
The potential.
Yeah.
Well, that's the weird thing about me is when you do something and you figure he's going to really get mad, he's okay. And then when you don't do anything, he gets mad at you. Max
was like that. Max Roach was like that. Same thing. We had a fist fight. I had a fist fight with Max.
Well, I heard he had a volatile temper, to say the least.
Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit about that.
If you were his friend, you would have had to fight him at some time. All of his friends had a fight with him. It's like a rite of passage.
Yeah, I had a very strange experience with Max.
Yeah.
Of course, idolized him like everybody. But when I did this alto summit in Paris with the 6 altos with Phil and Jackie Mack and, the other G Sharp, Vince Herring and Frank Morgan and me. And rhythm section was Humphrey on piano, Walter Davis Jr. and Percy Heath and Roy Haynes. Anyway, we were standing in line to meet Madame Mitterrand, the wife of President Mitterrand. And she was giving medals to Max and Dizzy. It was 2 days of celebration of Dizzy and 2 days celebration of Bird. So that was how it was. And Dizzy, this was this all-star band that was absolutely incredible. Milt Jackson, Billy Eckstein. Dizzy was toward the end of his life. 1990, 91, I think. Phil Woods, Jackie together. Then the 2 nights of altos, 6 altos, not all playing every tune at once, but we all had our features and this and that. So my feature was Embraceable You, and I played it by myself. So I'm standing in line for Madame Mitterrand, and I noticed the only time my knees started knocking, I was having such a good time that I almost forgot to be nervous because all these wonderful cats, and everything, and full concert hall, it's a dream. But as I'm about to go on stage to play Embraceable You, I mean, to go in front of the bandstand, I see Max Roach with a video camera just in the wings there, and he's going to video this. And though I did get a little panicky, but I played it, and actually it made me play better because I got this huge ovation, and it was a good version. You know, I mean, how could you not play great with those guys? You know what I mean? I mean, you know, you've been in that situation. You don't play anything less than your absolute best. So anyway, now I'm standing in line for Madame Mitterrand, and Max walks over to me and says, in the nicest way, he says, "Excuse me, but I don't believe we've had the pleasure of meeting. I just want to tell you that your embraceable you last night was exquisite and nearly brought tears to my eyes. And who are you and where have you been hiding?" So, you know, so I was high for a year on that one.
Yeah.
You know, and I should have called him and said, but he had his band with the Bridgewaters. He had his, you know, he had his own thing with that saxophone player, a very good player, very free kind of player that he used at the end a lot.
Odie.
Odie and Pope, yes. So, you know, but I felt that band was complete without me. So it was nice, a nice experience and this and that. But I did want to call him and get to know him better and, you know, tell him if he ever did want a saxophone player, and he had told me that, and that I was grateful. So I tracked down his number and I got, you know, his daughter and Maxine, and he said she'd get in touch with him and he'd call me. But I finally called enough that he took the phone. And I said, "Max," I told him about the experience. And I said, "You told me this." He said, "I never said that." I said, "You're not either you're a hallucination or you said that." He said, "Bring tears to my eyes. Even Bird couldn't bring tears to my eyes. What the hell are you talking about? I don't even fucking know you." I mean, I was like, whoa, okay, damn, you know? And, you know, I said, "That's a strange man." And,
you know what we had, he was schizophrenic. And so
just Gary, he told me, "I've been doing this cocaine for many years." He says, "I think it, you know, maybe I don't remember things because of this." He said, "But
yeah, that too.
but go ahead with this.
Yeah, no, he was schizophrenic he's the only friend that I've ever had that I knew which personality I was dealing with by his body language. I could look at him. We would look at him. They would say, "Well, yeah, is Max there?" They'd say, "Yeah." Well, we'd say, "Is it Max or is it Lem?" Because Lem was his other personality. His middle name was Lem. So we would say, "Well, is it Max or is it Lem? Who's there?" You know, because they were two totally different people.
Wow. Yeah. And
I mean, the fight we had. I'll make a long story short. But when I walked in and I looked up on the bandstand, I didn't have to look at Max. I just looked at the band and I knew it was Lem. That's how volatile that other personality was of his.
Lem was.
You could see the band was like, "Oh shit," you know. You know, I could see that. You know, otherwise, you know, they would be, "Hey, Bartz, what's up?" You know, but it was because Lem was there and Lem was in charge there.
That explains a lot. You know, I did have one more encounter with him, fortunately, which must have been that I encountered Lem. The first time was Max, the second time would be Lem.
Yeah.
And I had one more encounter. There's a woman named Francine Whitney, who is a singer and part of the Whitney family, and lived on Central Park West in the same building that Max lived in.
404.
404, yeah. And so she was having a Christmas party, and her boyfriend was a bass player, Jim, I forget his last name, but and a bunch of musicians were there, and I was blowing, and I was having a good time at this party, and Max was living with Connie Carruthers at that time. You know,
that's near the end, yeah. That's
near the end. So next thing I know, Connie, who I knew, you know, fairly well, was downstairs with Max. And she said, "You know, Max wanted to come down and hear who the alto player was." Because he was really enjoying it. And he came down and I met him again. And
did he remember?
Well, I said we actually have met one time before. You
Mhm.
you said gave me a very nice compliment in Paris, where oh, the funny thing was when he gave me that compliment, I was next in line to meet Madame Mitterrand. I wasn't getting any medal, but I was just getting a presentation, and it was like, oh, very nice to meet you, enchanté, madame. And Max, so Max told me, I just turned around and talked to Max, but um, he was very gracious. You know what I mean? He was like, well, you sound very good, man. You really sound good. Bring me
Mhm.
back some memories. And I'm like, okay, so fortunately it ended like that. But,
Yeah.
so who was on the band when you were on Max's band?
Oh, I was in several bands with him. But when I first joined, it was Julian Priester, Bob Cunningham, and Ronnie Matthews.
Uh,
Yeah, that's the band. That was the first band I ever joined. And Abbey. Abbey was singing with us. Uh,
right.
my first.
But you were with Art. Your first actual gig was with Art Blakey, right? Was
No,
that
it
your?
was with Max. It was with that band.
Oh, it was before you joined Blakey. You were with
Yeah,
Max.
yeah. I joined Max in '64. I joined Art in '65.
I see.
Yeah, because I had said the same thing. The year when I was 14, my dad took me to see Max. He was at a club called the Club Casino down on the avenue. That's where all the clubs were. And I sat in with Max when I was 14. And of course, you know how guys do. He called Cherokee and all the hard stuff. And then man, that's why I was playing because of Bird. So I didn't know one chord, but I knew I followed everything, because I could hear where they were going. So he gave me his number and said when I moved to New York, called and give him a call. And so that's how we got in touch. When I moved to New York to go to school, I called him. So I started going by his house all the time.
Oh,
Go by there and play chess. We'd play chess all day. I remember one day I went by and I must have caught him early because I beat him. I did a fool's mate on him. The first game we played, he, he made me play 14 more games.
wow.
And he beat me 14 more times.
You just had that one lucky streak. That one
One,
lucky.
he said, no. He said, no, you're not getting away with it. I should have got up and left then, but
That's fun. Did you still play chess?
I haven't played in a while. No, I haven't played, but
You know, I once asked Hank Jones about hobbies. This was, Hank was funny cat, man. I
yeah,
love him. He didn't do any drugs. He didn't do drinking. He never
I
had a
know.
cigarette, nothing in his life. And I knew him in his 80s. But
Yeah.
I said, Hank, your brother, I'm told, I didn't know Thad very well, but people tell me he was a great pool player.
Uh,
That he was that. And I said, do you have any hobbies? And Hank was like, I have no hobbies.
Playing the piano, that's his
That's
hobby.
it. The piano is my life, and
That's
I
right.
I don't have time for any hobbies.
That's right.
And,
I understand
you
that.
that was funny. But I wanted to ask you about some of your peers
Mhm.
because there's some cats that I never really got to know. That just you being just old enough to have really known these cats. I just was curious.
Mhm.
Of your generation. I mean, there were just certain cats on alto. I
Mhm.
would say you, Frank Strozier, McPherson, and Sonny Red, and
Mhm.
John Handy was a little bit older.
Mhm.
And I mean, there are some other cats, but
Yeah.
some of these guys I was curious about because I mean McPherson Charles I know very well,
Yeah.
but Frank Strozier I never really got to know.
I didn't either. I never really, I don't even know whether we even met. I listened to him a lot because I would listen if I'd go browse, which I would do once a week, I'm sure, in the record stores. If I saw a cover with an alto on it, I bought it. I wanted to hear every alto player. I'm trying to. That's how I found John Handy. I found him like that. That's how I found Frank Strohs. Yet I found them all. I didn't know who they were, but I saw the picture of them and with an alto on it, and so I would. That's how I found Art Pepper. I would just go in the stores and look for an alto.
Yeah, I know those the record stores were wonderful. I used to go to Happy Tunes on 8th Street,
Hmm.
the Village,
I remember that one. Yeah.
and I dreamt that that someday I would have a record
Yeah.
So one day, this is funny. I was living on McDougal Street. The phone rings, and a friend of mine says, "Oh, the record I'd done with Lee Konitz, which was actually the first record that I was on that came out in America. I'd done
Ah,
something with Matsuo that came out in Japan, but it didn't hit America.
yeah.
So this one, a friend of mine said, "Hey, the record." Oh, Konitz called me, and he said the record's out. He said it. They told me it's in the stores today. So I ran over to 8th Street from McDougal Street just about to see my record
Get in there.
at the store, and I went in there, and they're packing up, and I said, "What's happening?" They said the store's closing today.
Oh no.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
That's not very auspicious.
That was not auspicious. I said, "Oh boy." Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Not very auspicious. Now, your relationship to Jackie McLean. I mean, I was thinking that, you have these alto, more than one alto records where several, 3 or 4 alto players, but there aren't that many 2 alto records,
Mhm.
that I know of. And I mean, I've done some stuff with Conus that may be coming out now, finally,
Mm,
after 40 years. But
yeah.
anyway, better late than never.
Right.
And, and a 2 alto record that I enjoyed was this Ode to Super
Oh,
record that you did with Jackie. Also, I heard you guys live at the Bird's
oh,
birthday
right.
thing down on the Lower East Side,
Yeah.
Tompkins Square. Tompkins Square.
Understood. Yeah.
You
Hmm.
guys played, and you did a beautiful version of Lover Man,
Uh-huh.
as I recall. That was really
Yeah.
moving. I was very affected by that.
Yeah. No, that was my guy, man. You know.
Could you tell me about that relationship, how it started, how it evolved, and who was Super, by the way? The record is called Ode to Super.
Yeah, no, Ode to Super was the name of a play that Billy Galt, the pianist, had written. And so Jackie, Billy was working with Jackie, so we needed a song. So Jackie brought that song in. It's the super was the superintendent of a building in the ghetto,
Right. Oh,
and
okay.
so that's why the song she cleans down the empty hallways. It's talking about the superintendent of a building. The rats and the roaches. It's talking about it's in the ghetto. So
Right.
that's what that was about. It was a very powerful song. And when I found out it had words, I said, well, we got to sing it. And so that's why we ended up singing it on the record.
Well, I want to get back to Jackie, but I was just remembering another great a vocal that you did that might have been almost like a jazz hit, was a wonderful thing that you did called I've Known Rivers.
Oh, I've known rivers. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was now the Natu to NTU. How do you
Into,
say that?
into,
Into.
into. It's a root suffix of Swahili or Bantu language. Bantu. They wouldn't say Bantu. English would say Bantu. They say Bantu. Bantu. So ntu is the root suffix, so kintu, kutu, mu'ntu, everything ntu. So ntu is the root. So ntu encompasses everything, all of it,
Oh, that's great.
I would say.
So this was a Langston Hughes poem.
Poem was, yeah, the poem was called Negroes Speak of Rivers. I think that's what it was. And so that's what it was. And I actually wrote that on the guitar. I don't know how, I don't play that much guitar, but I was fooling around with it and then ended up writing it on the guitar.
Oh,
And I would, a lot of times when I hear melodies or write melodies, I when I'm looking for lyrics, I read poetry, and that one got me, and it fit, and so that's how that ended up. Yeah.
right. Was really nice. There's another version of it besides was that on Atlantic or is that on?
I think that was on Milestone, if I'm not. It was fantasy.
Yeah, Foreign Keep This.
Yeah.
And there's another version I saw on the internet, which was nice. It's some years later, and you sound beautiful on it, and then somewhat different on it too.
Oh yeah.
With a trumpet player named Theo Croker.
Oh, Theo did it.
Well, it's you did it with him.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Oh, go to the YouTube. It's great.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
he played
he
really good on it.
graduated. He graduated from Oberlin. He's one of our students that graduated,
He
and
sounds beautiful.
his grandfather was Doc Cheatham,
Oh, okay.
so he comes from royalty. You
I
could.
see. As Barry Harris used to tell people, "Oh, you was born into music."
Yeah, that's right. That's. I think we all are born into music. We just want to fool around with these man-made religions.
Yeah, I'm right with you there. I tell you, I say that quite a bit to people.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that's how.
I mean, it should be obvious at this point, but I mean, if you if the way you treat your citizens is to make them stupid, then that's not a very nice way. That means you really don't care about them. If you make like like I said, like an old style band leader, if I got a band and I withhold information or ghost them, give them wrong information, what they say, gaslight them and stuff, then I don't really care about them. And that's what they've done with us. I mean, we don't even see reality. We'll look at a person and we see the color of their skin before anything else. That's crazy.
Yeah, like you said, we're the only animal that does that, right?
And the only animal that does that.
And there was a book called The Painted Bird
Mm-hmm.
by Jerzy Kosinski, who's people know him better for Being There. He wrote that too. But to make a long story short, the book is about this kid during World War II. He's a little dark skinned, and he might be Jewish, he might be a gypsy, whatever he is. His parents are no longer with him. He's all by himself, and basically he's running through Europe just not to be caught by the Nazis, trying to get away and hiding and meeting. He has different experiences as he goes from village to village through the devastated Poland and Hungary and parts of Eastern Europe. And the title, The Painted Bird, comes from an incident that he goes to one village, and each place he goes, the people are even more depraved. It's like a vision of hell. It's like Dante, exemplified. Anyway, he's there. And in this particular village, what they like to do as a kind of sport is they capture a bird and they paint the bird different colors. And they wait till the bird's own kind is flying in a flock overhead. And they let out the bird who's painted and watch the other birds tear it apart in the air. Because it's blue or it's a different color. And anyway.
They don't recognize that it's a bird.
Yeah, they must not recognize that it's a bird.
What's the moral of that?
I have no idea. I'm asking you. You're the wise one.
But that's what it sounds like, is that they don't see reality. They can't see beyond. They don't see reality.
Yeah, well, that's the analogy, I think, right there. They're not.
Kids see it. A little kid sees it. When they see another little kid, it's just another little kid. That's it. Oh, another little kid like me, until they attain. No, that one's not like you. Why not? Look at its skin.
Yeah.
Then they wouldn't understand. What do you mean? What?
Well, when I lived in Jersey City for a while, there were these little kids in the neighborhood, and there were these two boys. They were best of friends. They were like 7, 8 years old. And it turns out one was of Egyptian or Palestinian origin, and the other was a little Jewish kid, Israeli kid, actually. And they were hanging out. They were inseparable friends.
Yeah.
And the story that I got, I spoke to one of the fathers one day. I said, that's beautiful, the way these little kids are getting along. I just love to watch them together. He said, it's very interesting, but I was very prejudiced against his parents. I mean, I'm from this side and he's from that side. And they felt that way toward us too. We didn't want these children to be friends, but they defied us. They said nothing was going to break their friendship. and now we become friendly with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so the little child will lead them.
What happened to me? This is my story, and I've asked this question, but I'll tell you my story first. Because I was Baltimore was a segregated city when I was growing up. It was segregated until they passed the Brown, the laws that you could go to the same schools when they desegregated schools. I was the second graduating class after they desegregated schools. As I went into high school in 55. So, but growing up first of all in Baltimore, so it's like I say, it was segregated. So the Fulton Avenue where my family moved to, we were the third so-called Black family to move into that neighborhood. And at that time, I later found out now, but there was a real estate scheme called block busting. What the realtors found out, they were building houses outside of Baltimore in the suburbs, and nobody was buying them. But they noticed that when a so-called Black family would move into a so-called white neighborhood, the white family would move. So that became a real estate ploy. They began doing that on purpose. So now we were the third, family.
Bring the prices down.
Huh?
To bring the prices
probably, yeah. But so my best friend was little Tommy Haviland, lived up on the corner, little white kid. We were best friends, went everywhere. We bought painted turtles together. We'd go downtown and go, we're every day after school. He would come to my house. I very seldom went to his house, but he, we were every day. One day he was gone. Didn't know what happened. Didn't know he was going to move anything. 2 years later, I'm sitting on the steps one summertime, and I see him riding down the street on his bicycle with two of his little new white friends. I'm so happy to tell Tommy. He ignored me and kept riding on. And that was the moment that I realized something was not right. And that's the question I asked. When, and this is everybody in this country, when did you realize that there was a problem with Black and white? Because until then, I didn't know. So then, when he ignored me, I'm wondering, why would he do that? We were best friends. What is this all about? And everybody has that moment, no matter who they were in this country, because this is the way this country was set up, But that was the moment that it happened for me.
That's an interesting story. I mean, that there was, you never saw him again? You never...
Never saw him again. Never saw him again. And I mean, we were really best friends.
That's profound. I mean, that's...
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's another question for these days, too, when you talk about music and the religious aspects of it and this and that, and why the younger generation, let's say, for instance, isn't having the same ears that your generation.
Same reason why they make you stupid, telling you got little kids standing up pledging allegiance to some flag they don't know nothing about. They don't know nothing about this, but that's the same reason, the way they're teaching music. They're teaching you to read it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that a presidential candidate didn't know what the cause of the Civil War was.
Literally, I've been all around the world. This is the dumbest country in the world.
I agree with you.
We only speak one language. Every country I've been to, the people speak at least 2 different languages, sometimes 3 and 4 different languages. Yeah. You have to be smart. You have to be smart to do that. You have to think. You have to. Well, we stumble with the one language. We have problems.
There's a joke in Europe about it. They say a person that speaks a person that speaks 3 languages is trilingual. A person that speaks 4 languages is quadrilingual. A person that speaks 2 languages is bilingual, and a person that speaks 1 language is American.
I like that one. I'm gonna use that one. It's true. We're a stupid country, man. Look what's going on in our politics. Can you believe this bullshit?
No, I don't believe it. I don't want to believe it. and I won't believe it, but I have
It's
to.
embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, I'm in one way. I mean, because of my illness, I have this tracheostomy, and I have emphysema and stuff, so I can't really travel. And I
Mhm.
thought I'd really miss it, which I do in some ways, miss the traveling, the playing for people and my European friends and everything.
Yeah.
But right now, it's a really good time not to be American and on the road.
I know.
If I could have chosen the time, this would be it. So I'm
Yeah.
not losing it too bad. But the other thing is with music, I could see the sabotage.
Mhm.
Like, to me, first we got melody, harmony, and rhythm.
Mhm.
So the first thing to go was melody,
Mhm.
maybe harmony went with it. Like, in other words, we grew up, there was pop songs you heard on the radio, and
Mhm.
even if it was my boyfriend's back and I'm gonna be in trouble, there was a
Mhm.
little bit of a melody there.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't got you under my skin, but it was a melody. You know what I mean? It wasn't. But I mean, and then the next thing that went was improv. Was not just I don't mean improvised. I mean spontaneous.
I don't say improv. We because once again, words with the one language that we use. Improvisation, if you've ever really looked what that means, it means we don't know what the hell we're doing. It means we're just making stuff up on the spot. It means unprepared. These are some of the definitions. Unprepared, that's an improv. You were unprepared. It was unstudied. You haven't studied it. It means all these. That's
Yeah.
not what we're doing. The only
No,
time
I meant
we improvise,
spontaneous.
huh?
I meant spontaneous creation.
Well, yeah, but the only time we improvise is when we make a mistake. And so if you're playing and this whole art form is how to cover up your mistakes so nobody knows you made the mistake. So you're not really making mistakes. Like I would hear Miles say a lot of times, he said, I love your mistakes. He could hear so well. You made a mistake and you covered it up so nobody hears it. He heard it.
See, I'm so
He could
glad you
always,
said that.
that's why he could hear, that's why he changed music, because he could hear the future. He
Well,
was really, he could hear, man.
but
Now,
I'm glad you said that because what you said about improvisation could be easily misunderstood in the sense that we don't make the mistake. But the thing is,
mhm,
you kind of do, you don't hear perfectly. I remember Sonny told me once, he said, did you ever play and you play a certain idea, and when you're playing it, you go, oh shit. And
mhm.
then later that you listen, and that was the hippest thing you played all night.
Yep, yep.
And Bish told me that it was either Bish or Walter Davis Jr. They told me something that Bird said that playing this music to him was you have to master the art of recovery.
Yeah, yeah.
And but
Because
that's what
see, that's what a composer does. That's why what we're doing is composing all the time. That's what I say. They've tricked us just like they've tricked us into thinking we're not the same group of people by saying, well, you're a different color. And they tricked us. They trick us all the time, and we keep going for it though. We don't have to go for it. you know.
yeah, that's insane. See, that's the thing that the old cliche about making the same mistake over and over and not realizing it. We're doing that. I mean, when are the Arabs and the Hebrews going to realize they're brothers? They're not going to get that.
They are closer together than almost anybody.
That's what I
They're
mean.
really the same people.
Why do we know that, and why don't they know that?
Because they're not taught that. That's what the educational system is. When you get little kids and teach them, Hitler knew that. That's why Hitler had the young people. They know when you get people when they're young, it's hard. Then when they get older, hopefully many of us change and really begin to see reality. But you kind of have to leave the country. You have to go different place. If you stay here, this is all you know. You don't see other countries, how other people live, and how. I remember there was a joke about Louis Hayes. First time he went to France, he said, "Man, boy, France is hip. Even the kids know how to speak French." But it's I mean, it's a conscious effort to keep us stupid. That's what the educational system is. And they're reading music, like they've got people, this is how bad it is. Their version of teaching music is to name a sound. Now, sounds don't have names because they're sounds. You can't say this. No way you can say that. You can say clap. Clap, no, what about? Does that sound like clap? You know, it might because you attach it now for all these years, but you know, it's a sound. You don't name a sound, you hear a sound. So if you play an A7, if you can't hear it, you see, so that's why they have to name it, because they don't hear it. They don't hear that, okay, it's an A7 going to a B flat diminished. So they can't hear that. So the only way they can play it is if you write it down, you know. So then they have to look at it or they have to memorize it. If they're doing that, the artistic part of your brain is not free to create.
The memorizing, I tell people you don't want to memorize anything. You want to learn things.
Yeah.
There's a difference between learning something and
Yeah.
memorizing it, you know, and you're taught to memorize chord changes. You know, all these kids, when you go do these master classes,
They memorize it.
they're memorizing it, and that ain't learning. That's not learning.
I tell them, ears, not eyes.
Ears, not eyes. And the interesting thing about that too, as far as naming things, oh, you know, one thing I hate even more than, I'm not crazy about calling it improvisation either, but the thing I hate more than that is improv. I've got to work on my improv. And I say, can you imagine Louis Armstrong?
I tell them they are already working on it because I hear all the mistakes.
Yeah, right. There it is. You know? Well, that's like, you know, when well, there are a couple points about that, but one thing is the thing that I was saying without naming it, the thing that Jerry Mulligan said about Chet that I told you the other day we were talking, but it's also true with players like, you know, Ira Sullivan and Stan Getz and Zoot Sims and many people who did not know.
Wilbur Ware.
Wilbur Ware.
Wilbur Ware played with Monk and didn't know one note.
Really?
He never owned a bass of his own in his life.
That's fantastic. He borrowed $5 from me once.
He borrowed $5 from everybody.
Yeah. He got me on a good day. You know, I was 16. I didn't often have $5, but I'd seen my uncle for lunch, and then Ware showed up.
He could cry. He could walk up to you. And actually, he could bring a tear. He could, if he had.
Wow, really? He could do that.
He was good. He was good.
But anyway, what Jerry Mulligan said about Chet and a lot of these cats, I mean, it could be applied to that. It said, because people said, oh, Chet doesn't know harmony. And Jerry said, no, Chet knows everything about harmony, everything about chords, except their names.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Because they don't have names. In reality, they're sounds. You know, you hear a siren go, what do you say? What do you say? What do you call that? You call it a siren. No, I mean the sound. You can't, it's a sound.
Right. You can imitate it if you want, but
maybe
gotta be, but you can't really get it.
No. That's crazy.
Oh, you know, there's that.
That's the way they're teaching music in the school. And then I have this problem of the young students think they're gonna write a song. I want you to hear my composition. First of all, they don't know any songs. How are you gonna write a song when you don't know? It's like, how are you gonna write a book about baseball when you've never played or even seen baseball? You know, I mean, so they come in with these little songs, and I tell them, you know what this song sounds like? It sounds like a little kid's song. Like a little kid, your mother wakes up and say, oh, we're going to the beach today, kids. And the kids say, oh, we're going to the beach today. We're going to the beach today. We're going to have fun. And then before you, a week later, the whole neighborhood is, we're going to the beach. So they wrote a song. That's a kid's song. You know, Mary had a little, that's what these songs, when they bring into me, they sound like that. Yeah, and they get hurt, but that's what they sound like. I'm saying, first, you don't know enough to write a song yet. I don't discuss it. Continue with it, but know that you don't know enough. You need to study more before you really can write a song, you know? And you can write a little kid song. Anybody can do that.
Well, the
Any,
level of music you find in pop culture these days, uh,
uh,
you and I may know too much to write a song.
oh, well, yeah,
I mean, we know the kind of songs we like to
yeah,
hear, and they have some sophistication to it. But I'm saying everything has been made stupid and
mhm,
primitive.
yeah.
That's it. You know, they might say, "Well, Gary, that's a nice song, but 20 people are going to understand it, even if it's simple enough." You know, if you wrote "Round Midnight,"
Yeah, but that's like not giving the people credit. I disagree with that. I think if people, because people, as a 4-year-old, as a 5-year-old, I heard Charlie Parker and fell in love. But my whole life I dedicated to something that I heard when I was 6 years old. So I disagree with that, man. If kids can hear it, if they are open and they hear it, they're not stupid. Especially at that age, they haven't been made as dumb as
well,
they're going to be made in the future.
yeah, I mean, I sort of agree with that, but I also agree that we're a product of the times that we come from. So, in the context of the times that we were in, there were still songs in the atmosphere.
Yeah, and they are still there.
They are there,
Yeah.
but it's hard to I mean, like for instance, I feel bad, but Taylor Swift, I don't
Mhm.
know any of her tunes.
Mhm.
I can't
I
sing
don't
you.
know any. I don't know any Wynton Marsalis tunes.
I know me either. I mean, but
I know Kenny Dorham tunes. I know Lee Morgan tunes. I know Dizzy Gillespie tunes. I know Woody Shaw. But I'm just saying, and Wynton is a great trumpeter. But it's a whole different world. I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, you know, Clifford Jordan. I guess
that's
we
my
can
brother.
censor this out if it's offensive. But I
Hey.
asked him about Wynton Marsalis, and Clifford said, "I'd like to lock him in a room with a bag of pot and a stack of Kenny Dorham records."
Well, for one thing, the blues, they don't understand the blues. The blues is the essence of American music. And nowadays, nobody here, very few musicians that can even play a good chorus on the blues. Not just one. They don't understand the blues. They don't
It's
understand.
still the most challenging thing.
Hmm?
I mean, it's a challenging thing to do to play a good blues chorus. I've
And
worked on it all my life, and I've almost got it.
well, but the blues is like a haiku. And if the it's got so many, like what do you call it? The rhythm, the
Still,
phrasing of it. It's 4 bars to, and that's what it is, and that's it. But
right.
it's
It's
not
a premise.
complete
Repeat the
solo.
premise and draw a conclusion.
Huh?
It's a premise repeated, and a conclusion
Yeah.
to the idea. You know,
And
basically.
but each one ends. If you listen to it, at the end of each 12 bars, there's a resolution because you've made that's what the blues. It's not when you get to the end and you keep going, then that's what they say. My baby didn't left me to then it, my baby did. And but then when she left me, I said, oh my goodness, because you sum it up. So when you sum it up, you got to make a resolution. You don't leave it up there. You got to make your resolution. So that's one thing that people don't understand about the blues. Um, the other thing is what I find, especially in students nowadays, they don't do their research. And Oberlin is a double degree curriculum. They have you can take double degrees there. And a lot of people take music because they think it's easy. It ends up being the hardest of any of the subjects that anybody could take, physics or any of them, it doesn't matter. So I mean, it's just the way that the school system is set up to it's set up to make you can be a teacher, you can make a good teacher. But Oberlin, Dr. Logan, Wendell Logan, he wanted a curriculum that taught this particular music like the way we learned it on the streets.
That's wonderful.
You know, not in the school. So that's why he brought professors that he brought in were still doing this.
How long have you been there, Gary, now?
22 years.
22 years. Well,
Yes.
now is that related to Oberlin in Ohio, or is it?
Yeah, it's in Oberlin.
But you've been there 22 years. I didn't realize you've been out there that long. Wow.
Yeah.
And
I start. You know what my first day there was?
No.
11.
When? Oh, September 11th.
All right, September 11. I was in the air when the first plane hit the World Trade Center. I was still in the air.
Wow.
Yeah. So when we landed, you know, nobody knew what was going on, you know. So I ended up, I'm waiting for my, you know, the ride to the school. We were looking at the TV, and it was 2 pilots and a few other people. And the second plane hit. And one of the pilots actually said, "Wow, what a coincidence." That was no coincidence. And I don't know how he's a pilot. And he thought it was a coincidence.
Nothing coincidental about it.
I mean, he's a pilot. It says, what a coincidence that 2 jet planes hit the world to hit the same building. I mean, come on. That's how stupid we are. This is a very stupid country.
Exercise of stupidity, you know. One thing about the blues that's funny, when I was in Spain one time, I have a friend who was a club owner, and I was playing his club, and I come over in the daytime and have lunch with him. He's a very nice cat. And he was playing fado music, which is Portuguese music. Also comes from the Cape Verdean Islands. There's that wonderful, you know, and so I'm listening to it and I'm enjoying it, and I'm saying, man, what exactly are they saying? Because I mean, I'd like to know what the lyrics are, you know, and generally what's the character of this music. He said, well, it's very, very sad music. I said, really? I said, how sad is it? He said, it's like the blues with no hope. And he said, what makes the blues, and it was a good point, what there is, and it goes right into the plight of the black, of the Afro-American, and maybe, as Albert Dailey told me, he was reading the history of the Jews once. I said, you're reading the history of the Jews? He said, yeah. He said, well, you know, you were slaves before we were. I might learn something from it, you know. But you know, he was, you know, that we have, the thing about the blues is that there is some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, and it isn't necessarily a moving train, that there's some way out of the premise is usually one of darkness, and then there's some hope.
Yeah, there's a resolution. But that's what I'm saying. There's a resolution. You know, you solve it. You solve whatever it is, you know.
Right. And he said fado doesn't solve it.
Yeah.
It just keeps suffering.
That's funny.
You know. So, gee, we should do more of this. There's still a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, Jackie McLean. I wanted to know about a little bit like that, how you guys got to know each other, and your relationship, if you don't mind.
Well, like I said, when I was 17, I moved to New York to go to school. I went to Juilliard. So, and in registering for Juilliard, in line, I met Gratian Marnker III and Andrew Cyril. And we became friends. We actually had a band together when we were in college. And then when we were no longer in school, Gratian started working with Jackie. And so I was good for Jack. Gratian actually taught me harmony. He showed me, because I didn't know. That's why I wanted to go to Juilliard, because I didn't know. I could play everything, but I didn't know what they were called. I didn't know what any chord. I used to go, Freddie Hubbard moved to New York in August of 58. I moved in September of 58. So we met early at a jam session. We started to go around the jam session. We would meet at somebody's house and say, okay, what we're going to play. Let's play something that nobody else knows so that we'll keep the other horn players off the stage. So he would call songs. And I remember one time he said, let's do Wouldn't You? And so we were looking at wouldn't you, and I would never end up in D flat. I would end up in D or somewhere. And he was calling, he might have, he was calling, I didn't know what he was saying. He might as well have been talking Greek or anything. And so that's when I said, I gotta learn this stuff. But so I forgot why he was saying.
You're talking about Jackie.
Oh, right. So he introduced me to Jackie.
Freddie's interesting too.
Gracious. Because he was started working with Jackie. So I went by one time he had a gig at the Blue Coronet. And I went by there and I sat in. It was like a Saturday night and the place was crowded. And so people have a thing like when a young musician plays, with an older musician, just because they're young, so that night, people were, after I played, people, so Jackie was, I think he might have been a little annoyed at that, because
I had Freddie annoyed one night.
Oh, yeah.
I was like 17 and people liked it, and Freddie gave me a dirty look.
Yeah, they don't like that. So anyway, so afterwards, I'm watching their next set, and my friend I was with, I said, man, I got to go to the bathroom, watch my horn. And so I gave him my horn, and I went to the bathroom. When I came back, I said, where's my horn? And he said, oh, shit. And I had lost my horn, man, and I'm new in New York. I don't have my horn now. Oh, shit. So the dressing room, it was downstairs in the Blue Coronet. And so I went downstairs. They said, Jackie wants to see you. So I went down, and Jackie had my horn. He had taken my horn down there. He said, look, don't ever leave your horn with anybody. Take it with you. So that was a lesson, but man, it scared the hell out of me. So that was the first time we began to bond. So then we would hang out for 30 years, Yeah.
There was one other thing I really did want to talk about before we split, because I really think this is important to talk about. As Ornette once said, I believe it's attributed to him, one must never confuse the music business with the business of music.
Mm-hmm.
And, I respect you a lot, Gary, because you've managed to negotiate, as you started talking about earlier, by owning your material and doing these kind of things, avoiding the foolishness and ignorance, a certain way, of the previous generations, as far as the business parts were concerned. So but you have had certain trips where you would learn things along the way, like with record companies and agents and this kind of thing. So I have a twofold kind of question for you. One thing is that as far as booking has gone, you've worked very consistently for the most part, even as a leader. You worked a lot as a sideman too, but in other words, have you had an agent, or did you do this yourself, or what was your process and procedure for getting work through the years? How do you go about
all of the above? All of the above. I've done it. I've had managers. I've had agents. I've been with the biggest booking agents you can have. I forget what not Harry Fike, but I've been with all of those. So and you just have to, if you find someone who's really good at because just like you have good managers, you have good musicians. You can be with a manager, that don't mean they're good. I've been with managers who made it hard for me to work.
Yeah, I've had a bit of that too.
Yeah, so, you just have to, until the same thing with band. You when you find it, picking the guys for your band, you want to pick the right people, because to me, I feel like with Miles, is every band that he had, I would think, because I know my band, the one I was in of his. If you were in Miles's band, you were now a part of his family. And so there was nothing you could, your family. I mean, Red Garland was 2 days late for a gig in Philadelphia one time. Miles had to get subs, but when he came back, you made it back. A lot of guys with Art Blakey, you might have been, that was it. You're no longer in the band, but with some bands, you wouldn't have been in the band. But when you were in his band, you were in his family. So a band is a family thing, because you're out on the road, you're traveling around the world, you got to look out So a lot of times it's just you, the band against the world. You get to certain countries and politics, it's all kinds of things. So,
Speaking of Miles, there's a funny thing. I mean, the cats I've known who have worked with Miles and this family thing, I think this relates to that. Is the world has this impression of Miles, the Dark Prince, and this kind of humorless type of thing. But he, according to a couple stories I know, I'll just run them by you because you may have heard them. But
he was one of the funniest men I've ever known.
That's what I'm wondering. I mean, the two stories I know that crack me up, they're both short, is Mike Stern, who had a real run-in with a substance abuse problem and this and that, and really, he went to the anonymous, route, the friend of Bill, and all that stuff with the drugs. And one night he's playing, and Mike tends to play very notey and very virtuosically. So Mike told me one night he's playing, and Miles walks up and whispers in his ear. He says, "You ought to join N.A. Notes Anonymous." and Humphrey told me a story that Herbie told him, that he said one night they were in Germany or somewhere, like that in Europe, Germany, Austria, one of those countries. And there's this big 9-foot Bosendorfer. And Herbie is in love with the thing. He's playing it, and he's playing everything that can possibly be done on piano that night. And then Miles walks over. He's in a very long, elaborate thing. And Miles whispers something in his ear. And then Herbie makes that the last chorus and drops out and, stops playing. And after the concert, Ron or Tony or Wayne, one of the guys on the band, said to Herbie, "What did Miles tell you?" He said, "It's only my funny Valentine."
I'm telling you, man, he was really funny, man. He was a funny man.
Do you have any illustrations of that?
2 years we laughed, man. Because of his voice, people didn't understand a lot of times. At one time we were in Florida, and I think we were doing the University of Miami. So it was one of the kids who had booked the concert, and we were at the airport, and Miles was talking to him on the phone. And so I could see Miles was getting, a little frustrated. So he gave me the phone. Say, talk to them. So I take the phone, and the kid says, "What's wrong with Miles? Is he drunk? What's wrong with he?" Because of his voice.
Right, he didn't know.
Yeah, they didn't know. They thought but that's So he used that a lot of times, because when he would say things, it was a joke. But because of his voice, people would think he was serious, or they just didn't get it. But he was fun. Richard Pryor was living in his house. He had an apartment on the top floor, and Richard was
Upper West Side.
Richard would always come whenever we worked in New York. He would come by and work on new material. So I can only imagine them two together, man. And I hear a lot of material that Richard uses. I know he got from Miles.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, and just one other thing too, because I did want to get into this. One thing I did while I was researching your music, even more, and it was a ball, man. I really had a good time going through, your stuff. Some notable records that people might want. I mean, there's so many, but I liked Monsoon a lot. I love the way he plays Strode Road. And our friend Butch Lacey, who was a beautiful piano player from San Diego, but anyway, then there's just a lot of stuff. But one thing that I was especially knocked out by, which I didn't know about, was this record called The Blues Chronicles.
But on the Monsoon, Samuel, there's a song in there called Samuel.
Right.
That was Albert Dailey, because his friend Yusef Salim, he's from Baltimore. He was a mentor to both of us, me and Albert. So he wrote that song for Albert. But everybody in Baltimore called Albert Sam.
Oh, so Albert wrote that song for Sam?
No, Yusef Salim wrote that song for Albert. But they called him by
Samuel, right.
Yeah,
Why,
because
why they call Albert Sam?
yeah, I don't know why they call him, but if you were from Baltimore, they called him. I never called him Sam. I always
You
called him Albert.
I also heard the rumor that Bill Cosby's Fat Albert character was at least partially based on Al Dailey, because Al did have a way of spoiling
No,
fun.
you know who that was? That was Johnny Coles. Because
Oh,
Johnny Coles would say, "Hobby cabbage." He would talk like that all the time. Wubby wubbage. And Albert did that too. We were on tour one time, man, with Jimmy Rouser. This is funny, Louis Hayes. And so we would knock on Jimmy Rouser's door, and Jimmy Rouser would say, "Who is it?" And Albert would say, "It's the Boogie Mamage." And so the Boogie Man, he was saying the Boogeyman, but it was the Boogie Mamage. And so Jimmy, he was a little older than us. He finally said one day, man, we were in the airport. He said, "Albert, man, what is a Boogie Man, bitch?" we must have laughed for the rest of the week.
yeah. Well,
But
you know, Albert.
if you're saying okay, he said, "Obi cabbage." You
That
know.
sounds like Albert. Yeah. One time I said I hadn't seen Albert for a while, so I said, "So Al, we're starting to talk," and I said, "So how's your love life?" He goes, "What do you mean by that?" Like that. What do you mean? I said, "Well, I mean, are you still married? Because the last time I'd seen him, he'd had a brief marriage, or are you living with somebody, or what's your?" We've known each other through a few relationships.
Right.
And I said, "So what's your status these days? What are you up to?" He said, "Well, let me put it this way to you, Bob.
Say
There,
what?
let me put it this way to you, Bob. There is a lady with whom I reside, but I live alone."
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
that was our dear Albert.
Yeah.
And the strange thing, just to finish my story with Albert, which was rather sad, we had, I mean, Al used to stay over at my house, and I'd give him my bed and sleep on the floor, and wake up in the morning, and he'd bring out a bottle of little Nicky vodka and and whatever, and we'd play all day on my little Wurlitzer electric piano.
Hmm.
Hours we play, we practice, and I'm not really. Well, you don't practice, you just blow, you
Yeah.
just blow, you know.
No, he
But
lived with me for 6 months. He lived in my house.
really, and you didn't. I wanted to throw him out the window sometimes, but I loved him.
Yeah,
He could get to you. I mean,
he could. He could.
But anyway, what he would do though is he'd play these tunes and he'd reharmonize them and do all this, and that was what I call getting my doctorate degree. Was he wouldn't tell me. I'd say, "What are you doing there harmonically?" He said, "You got ears, you can hear it."
That's right.
And I'd say, "Well, I'm not hearing it." He said, "Well, keep trying."
Keep trying. Yeah, because it's there. It ain't like it's gonna go away.
Yeah, right. But I was learning. And then finally we did a record on Xanadu called Things Unseen. Albert and Ray Drummond and this drummer Bobby Ward from Boston, great drummer.
Hmm.
But Albert and I played a duet of Yesterdays, which was his crip. He
Hmm.
had his own changes to that, and he would always, when he featured him, and if there was one tune to play at night, he played it almost every night I ever heard him. He played Yesterdays, and he had these unusual changes for it, and they
hmm.
the tune that he made me hear, and he does some stuff with minor thirds that I was that took a while for me to hear it, but we had decided to play on those changes, which was
Hmm.
da 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 da, a one chord for each note of the melody, and that ends up in about four tonal centers in that passage. And and good luck. But I got it. We were like, I could skate through it. Got pretty comfortable. So
Right.
we made this record, and it was a really good record, and even got mentioned in People Magazine as having been a very special thing. I don't
Mm.
know how I got it there, and unfortunately, it mentioned how I play. It didn't mention Albert. It said Mover does this, he darts and does this, and then takes a sudden turn and then does this, and it was him. And I'm saying, there's bad luck, boy. I mean, it was. I wanted to write. I did write them a letter, actually. I did write People Magazine a letter to Eric Levin, the critic, and said thank you for this excellent review and this and that, but it's really Albert that is the father of these changes and everything. But anyway, about 2 months before Albert died, I had moved to Montreal,
Mm.
because I got a teaching offer there, and the mother of my first daughter was pregnant with her. So I had moved there, and the record came up, and I get a call from Albert, and Al calls, and it's the first time probably in our lives that he's not called me collect. And if he were out of town, wanted to talk to me, where he's in East Oshkosh, Michigan, and just feels like hanging out, I get a phone call, collect from Albert Dailey. So, you know, so we're there. And then he said the strangest thing. He said, you know, you got to come back to New York now. I said, well, no, I've already got a teaching gig in Montreal, and my daughter was just born, you know, a month ago, and I'm trying to, I can't really come back now. He said, well, you got to come back because this is my year. This is the year it's going to happen for me. He said, you know, I mean, and I want to take you with me. I'm going straight to the top. I mean, I can feel it that, and, you know, and you and I, you know, we got all the right combination of stuff, the way we intuit each other, this and that. We got the salt and pepper thing for the public, you know, we got all that together, and let's do it, man. Can you? And I said, listen, Hal, let me tell you, if you get something, if you can sell us, book us, I'll try to get out of town and go to New York and have a play with you or meet you on the road somewhere. We don't need to rehearse, you know, we got our shit. And he was reluctant, but he said, all right, let's see what I can do. And next thing I knew, he had died in June of that year.
Yeah. And that was in Canada, where he was too, wasn't it?
Well, he died in Colorado. Oh, I don't know if he died.
Oh, Colorado. That's right. It was Telluride.
With Stan Getz, you know.
Because I talked to him. I tried to talk to him. He was in house. He had a tricky, you know, he couldn't really talk. He had the thing in his throat. But I did talk to him before he passed. But because he shouldn't have taken that gig. You know, the doctors told him don't go. He had what they called walking pneumonia. They didn't know what it was at the time. This was before AIDS, when AIDS was first coming around.
Well, AIDS had come out. Somebody said that he was one of the first people diagnosed with AIDS that had it because of drugs.
Well, they didn't know. They didn't know. Probably could have been, because I mean, I know how he was, but the doctor said they said, we don't advise you to make this trip because you have problems. They called it walking pneumonia. So and then Freddie Waits died, and they called it. That's what they were calling it. They didn't know what to call it in those days. They would call it walking pneumonia. And so, but he had always tried. He wanted to get to Telluride. He always wanted that gig for some reason. And so, you know, he talked the doctor and then letting him go, and he went out there, man. When he went in the room, they had to break down his hotel room door because he wouldn't answer the door. They had to break down the door and take him to the hospital. You know,
he was out there with Stan Getz, right? Was that?
I'm not sure who he was with.
Yeah, I think he was out there with Stan.
They all had, you know, because like I said, they had masks. They had, you know, it was like, because this was new, the AIDS and all of this was new. They didn't know what to do, man. Probably he could have lived had they had the right information, but you know,
it was tragic. But anyway, the last thing I want to talk about is your Blues Chronicles, and I would suggest anybody who's hearing this should really listen to this because it's really a chronicle. It's got a whole story, you know. It's could you talk a little bit about that and the reason for making it? You said it was a Baltimore kind of oriented project.
It ended up, I didn't start out being that, but what it ended up being was because I was under contract with Atlantic Records. I bought my house because of that contract. It was very, you know, it was good contract. When it was time for the second record, well, actually, what happened was I was doing a record with Cindy Blackman. It was her record with Ron Carter and Kenny Barron, quartet record with Cindy's record. So you know how the record label, they have to get permission from the other record label. So I'm on contract with Atlantic. So they called Atlantic to get permission for me to do the record. And when they called Atlantic, they said, well, he's no longer with us. Now I'm getting ready to do a second record, but now, so her people, though, she called me back. She said, they said, you're no longer with Atlantic. And that was news to me and my manager. So my manager called up. They had dropped me. And neglected. neglected to tell me. You know? And so what my manager did was he renegotiated the contract. So I ended up making half of what I would have made had the contract lived up to its, to its words. And so I said, well, I've had it with the record industry. This, I just can't take, this doesn't make sense. I said, if I can't make a record and own it, I'm not even going to do a record anymore. So I knew this record, I'm leaving the industry. So I said, but I'm going to make a record that is going to be so good that if they don't, because I knew they weren't going to sell it. I knew that. But I wanted the record to live.
You knew this because they'd already made their investment and they weren't going to.
Yeah.
That's how you knew that.
Why would they promote a record of some artist that they are getting ready to get rid of? That doesn't make sense. That's against, any kind of business thing. So I that's why I made this record. That's why everything was short. I'm thinking singles, because I'm thinking like in the past for records, they were 3 minutes when I started buying 78s, they were 3 minutes. That's all you could get on a record. So I said, well, what's nowadays to play a record 3 minutes is really short on the radio. So I said maybe 5 or 6 minutes is comparable to what a 3-minute record. So that's why everything on there was short enough so it could get radio play all over the place. It was the #1 record in Germany for 2 months, unprecedented. No record had ever done that. And I knew they were not going to promote. That didn't mean I'm showing them, look, the record's #1. They didn't do anything. So I knew that, that's why I did that record. And so that was really my farewell to the record industry. And I haven't had to deal with them people, I mean, they do things like, I used to wonder, why do the records only come out on Tuesdays?
I never knew that.
Yep, they only, because that's when the distributors and everybody ship them to the stores. They ship them, it was always Tuesdays. I'm saying, that's why one record I said, I'm not going to release it on a Tuesday. Because you could, but it's so set up and regimented, So, but that's why I started my own record label. It's called Oyo, Own Your Own Recordings.
Oyo.
Yeah, that's the name of the record. And it's also a tribe in Africa, Oyo, the Oyo tribe. So Oyo is a word I later found out,
That's funny. You didn't know when you.
No.
The name, just some synchronicity there. One other thing. Rollins and Coltrane. Did you ever have a chance to know Coltrane?
I met him when I was 14. I told you when I was going at 14 was my coming out year.
I understand.
I was a debutante. I was a male debutante.
Mine happened at 17.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But that was the time I finally had the courage to sit in with people.
Yeah.
And make a fool of myself, but I'm not always.
That's how you learn, though.
Yeah, and if you always make a fool of yourself, you got to find something else to do.
Yeah.
But
you're just a fool.
Then you're just a fool. But if you manage, you say, wow, I sat in with Roy Eldridge and he didn't throw me off the bandstand. He seemed to like it. James Moody didn't kill me.
Right.
I think I'll try this again. And, and you
keep doing it. They could hear you had it. Yeah.
Yeah, there are things that people can hear. But back to Coltrane, I'm just wondering about John and Sonny, and then I'll leave you alone. I mean, I could talk to you for another 5 hours, and I know, we'll definitely get a 2-parter out of this one.
Okay.
But
what would you want to know?
You met John when you were 14. And what was that like?
Well, I actually didn't know who he was. I met him at a jam session. And it was him and Benny Golson. They were working, I think, either with Bull Moose Jackson or Earl Bostic. I don't know. They were working in Baltimore, and they were supposed to do 2 weeks. The second week was canceled, so they were just hanging out. So that.
What year would this have been when you were 14? This is
54, 53 or 54.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but they went back. They heard me. They went back. Benny, because Benny later told me, yeah, you remember when we met, me and John, and yeah, they went back to New York raving about this little young alto player in Baltimore. So I said, man, Train knew about me before I knew about him.
That's interesting.
But yeah, so I mean, that was the guy, man. And between him and Rollins, I used to want to be Sonny Rollins. I had my beard. I tried to look like it because we looked to do. And when I saw him one time with McCoy, and he looked at us, and McCoy said, "Wow, me talking about me and Sonny said, yo guys could be brothers." And Sonny said, "Yes, we're from the same tribe." So I always tried to look like that was my man, Sonny Rollins. Even when I heard the Tenor Madness, I couldn't decide. First, I thought Sonny. I said, "Man, Train got him. Train got you that time." Then I heard that, "No, Sonny got you." Then I say, "No, neither one of them got each other. They were just playing it." It's a great record.
And did you have any relationship with Sonny, or personally, did you get to know?
Yeah, I got to know him pretty well. My dad promoted a concert in Baltimore at the Lyric Theater, and I opened for Sonny because my dad knew how much I loved Sonny, so that's who he had. So the show didn't do as well as they thought, and my dad couldn't pay him all the money that he had said. So he gave him the saxophone that my dad was using because my dad wanted to play a little. He would mess around with it. So he gave Sonny the horn. So every time I talked to Sonny said, "Oh, I still have your dad's horn."
Oh wow, that's funny.
Yeah.
What's the name of your dad's club?
The North End Lounge.
North End Lounge.
Yeah, it was at the end of North Avenue on the east side. Yeah. I actually joined Art Blakey and the Messengers from my dad's club. They were working at his club then. And I was living in New York because I moved to New York in 58. They didn't buy the club until 1960. So I had already moved to New York.
So you didn't grow up with they didn't own the club when you were.
No, not when I was young. No, they didn't have it.
I see. Because I had the impression that you grew up with that, but
no.
There's also a credit of Gene Ammons in your bio that I wasn't aware that there was.
Oh yeah.
Was there a relationship with Jug there?
Well, Jug, man, I was a part of the Left Bank Jazz Society, which had been initially called the Interracial Jazz Society, because Baltimore was a segregated town. So when they started this club, they wanted everybody to know everyone is invited. So they called it the Interracial Jazz Society. But the musicians would come from New York. They said, "Man, why y'all name it that? That's a stupid name." So it became the Left Bank Jazz Society. But what did you ask me?
Oh, about Gene Ammons.
Oh, right. So the Left Bank Jazz Society, their God was Gene Ammons. You put on a Gene Ammons record, the party was on. Once they get up and dance, as soon as Jug came on. So I grew up like listening to Jug, man. I love Jug. And
yeah, me too.
And so then I met him because we were both on the same label. So then I got to know him a little better. So he was doing a record, and he had asked Cannonball to do the record with him. And Cannonball said, "Well, I can't do it, but I recommend, Gary Bartz." And so Jug said, "Well, who the fuck is Gary Bartz?" So I had sat in one time. We had done the Montrose Festival, and I had sat in with Jug and Dexter at the Montmartre, and they played the blues, and so I know I can play the blues. So Jug remembered from there. So Cannonball said, "Yeah, the young kid that played the blues with you that night in Montmartre." He said, "Oh, okay." So that's how I ended up on that record.
Oh.
Yeah, because
you knew Cannonball as well, like.
I knew Cannon because my dad worked on the railroad. He would talk about his friend Charlie Adderley. Charlie Adderley got a nephew that plays alto. He would tell me all the time, and I found out it was Cannonball. So we knew each other from then. So Cannon knew me because his uncle would talk about his friend Floyd Bartz, who had a little kid that played alto. So when they came to Baltimore with Cannon came to Baltimore with Yusef and Joe Zawinul, that's when I met all of them. They came by my dad's club. And during that part, I've had all false teeth since I was 23.
Really?
Uppers and lowers. I had to have them all pulled. So when I met Cannon, I had moved back to Baltimore to get them all pulled. I knew I had to do it eventually. So this was the time. So when I met Cannonball, he looked at me, he said, "Oh, I know this young man can play. He don't even have no teeth." So, but that's when I met Cannon and Yusef, brother Yusef. And
That's funny. Well, it's been a great pleasure to have this experience with you.
I've enjoyed myself.
And I'm just the great Gary Bartz, if you're just tuning in here, is with us, and still going very strong and youthful. Hi, you look like you're younger, man. And we pretty much covered anything. We covered a lot today.
We did.
And I'm looking forward to
Part two.
Part two.
Yeah.
And we got. But amazingly, I had like 20 something questions here, and somehow it looks like I covered a lot of them.
Okay, that's good.
Oh yeah, I used to love to play that tune of yours, by the way, called Uncle Bubba.
Oh, Uncle Bubba. Yeah.
I love those intervals.
That's where that came from. And you know who Uncle Bubba is?
No.
Monk.
Oh, really? See, I didn't know that.
His nephews and nieces called him Uncle Bubba.
Uncle Bubba.
And then I found out Lester Young was an Uncle Bubba.
Uncle Bubba too.
Yeah, so I say, man, most families have an Uncle Bubba.
Yeah.
But when I originally wrote the song, it was kind of based on Mysterioso, boom, beat,
Right.
So that's why. And the original title was because I loved the way Sonny played with Monk. I thought they were.
Yeah.
So the original name was Uncle Bubba and Sonny.
Uncle Bubba, yeah.
I just changed it to Uncle Bubba.
With that record, with that, and with Reflections, and
yeah, I got that one Christmas. I was still in high school.
Yeah, there's
Horace Silver and Monk were both on that record.
Oh, there's I'm trying to think. There's a poet. He was poet laureate, and he wrote a beautiful poem about listening to Monk and Sonny while walking in New York. And I can't remember his Billy Collins. He's actually poet laureate of the United States for a while, and he has this this poem. I'll try to send it to you, but it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Monk and Sonny play with The Way You Look Tonight as he walks down the street in New York, and he gets it. He really gets the feeling of that music too,
Yeah.
Did you know Monk? Did you have any experience with Monk? Or
I knew Monk. I don't know whether he knew me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I would take him gifts and, I would follow him all the time, but I actually ended up living in his apartment, the one that had caught fire when he moved, but I ended up living there for a little while.
Well, that's interesting.
And he had in his back room, he had nothing but music. He's got a lot of music back there.
Wow.
And the piano as soon as you walk in, it was the piano was right in the kitchen, those New York apartments. And it was a white spinet with cigarette burns all over the piano.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, Gary, thank you very much. And thank you, Jesse Kaiser, for being here and helping organize all this. Right. I would like to say very hearty thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Bob.
And we're looking forward to showing this to the world.
Okay.
And keep it as beautiful as you have been all these years.
And you do the same.
Thank you, my friend.
Yes, indeed.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.